Hi there, and welcome back. I'm Carl, as always, with Targets of Attitude, and I welcome back to my little corner of cyberspace. Today I want to talk about something a little different. Still knife related, but today I want to talk about knife flaws. Now, why, you ask? I mean, a knife is a knife. What's the big deal about knife flaws? Well, let me give you a couple examples. Earlier this year, a man was arrested in Scotland, and on May 2nd of this year, he was found guilty of carrying an object with a blade or a sharp point, which is a felony under British law. The object in question was a potato peeler. Yes, that's right. This man's going to jail, possibly for 5 years, for carrying a potato peeler. I'm sorry, I'm half Scottish. I love the Scots. I've got a lot of respect for the British. But locking a man up for 5 years for carrying a potato peeler? Are you nuts? Come on. Get real, people. And it's not just in Great Britain that you have to worry about this sort of thing. Late last year, well, not that late because it's already gone before the New York Supreme Court, but a man, 36 years old, no prior convictions for anything, was arrested by a police officer in the subway station because the police officer could see the pocket clip and butt of a knife sticking out of his back pocket, which is illegal in New York. But it doesn't stop there. The police officer examined the knife and found out that, well, they don't tell me what type of knife it is, other than the fact that it is an assisted opening knife, like this one. This is a Ruger LCK. Some of you may have seen my review of it. Very nice knife. And for a mail clerk like this guy, it's beautiful. It opens very smoothly. It is assisted opening, which means that there is a little spring inside that when you push on this piece of the blade called the tang, the spring helps the blade open. Problem is, the police officer then went to court and told the court that this was a switchblade, and he knew that because of his training and experience as a police officer. Okay, let's take a look at that, shall we? New York law defines a switchblade as any knife that opens automatically via spring assembly when activated by a button or switch. This is a true switchblade. Here in South Carolina, it's legal for me to own this. Carrying it is a little questionable, though. Law says I can carry it as long as I don't conceal it. Problem is, and I put it in my pocket, it's concealed. But you notice in the middle of the handle, as defined in New York law, there is a button. This button is separate from the handle, separate from the blade, and is made up of 2 or 3 parts, so that when you push the button, like so, the spring automatically spits out the blade. He then takes a look at this. Well, big thing where I'm going is that with a switchblade, any switchblade, whether this one or others, It's going to go. It's completely dependent on this button and the spring mechanism. If this button breaks, or the spring inside of it breaks, you can't get that blade open. It's locked. The only way you're going to be able to get that blade open is to take your knife apart. Let's take a look at this knife. There's no button or switch on the handle. What there is a little piece of the blade referred to as a tang. It is part and parcel of the blade, not separate. It's not got 2 or 3 working parts. It just has the blade. If this do that, the spring will open it. Here's the trick. If that spring breaks, since you've got part of the blade itself sticking out, you are still going to be able to get this thing open, even with the blade with the spring broken. Can't do that with a switchblade. This requires you to actually put some force against the blade to get it open. Spring helps it, but it's the force of your finger on the blade that causes it to open. With a switchblade, if something hits that button, let's say it's in your pocket and keys or a wallet or something gets pushed up against the button, it's coming open. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. Keys or wallet gets pressed up against this, it's not coming open. It takes deliberate force against the blade to open it. So how is this a switchblade? According to that police officer, it is. And the scary thing is that when the case was appealed to the New York Supreme Court, 6 out of the 7 justices on the New York Supreme Court agreed with him and said that this is a switchblade. And their agreement took the form of one short paragraph. They basically looked at nothing, just said, yeah, the officer's right, it's a switchblade. Which means that if you live anywhere in the state of New York City, or Syracuse, New York, doesn't matter. If you've owned one of these, you own a switchblade, and you're breaking the law. Assisted opening knives are the most commonly used knives in the U.S. Why are they so common? Because they're handy. Take our mail clerk who got caught out here. He's got a package in one hand that he's got to open. He's opening packages all day. Say the desk in front of him is littered with other packages and he's got no place to put it down, but he's got to get open. If you've got a traditional pocket knife, you've got to find some place to put that package down so you can use both hands to open up the knife. With this knife, or even this knife, which is not assisted open but is very smooth. This, by the way, is a Roik Hesser, and I love it. Either way, either knife, you can open your knife one-handed without ever having to put that package down. You're good to go. So now this innocent clerk, who has never been arrested for anything in his life, now has a felony conviction on his record, and the New York Supreme Court has upheld it. Could be even worse, though. This knife that I showed you, okay, it's not spring assisted. It's a completely manual opening. In the state of New York, this is defined as a gravity knife. What is a gravity knife, you say? Well, they were originally developed just before World War II. They were particularly popular among German paratroopers because they needed a small, light knife that could easily be opened in case they got hung up in trees or something. A gravity knife was a knife that they could touch a switch or something on the handle and the blade would fall open just due to the force of gravity. And it gave them a very reliable knife they could use to cut those parachute cords in an emergency. As you can see, gravity's not opening this. Even, I can shake it, and it's smooth enough. It's got nice bearings, it'll open. But I have to give it a shake. It's not going to open on its own. In New York City, if they can get it to open, even if it takes a flick of the wrist, they define it as a gravity knife. So this can't be used either. That just takes out somewhere around 3/4 of all knives sold in the U.S. If you're going through New York, even as a tourist, and you've got one of these knives, you're screwed. Sorry, dude, but that's it. You're screwed, blued, and tattooed. And it's not just New York. California is almost as nutty. In both cases, the knife laws came into play because of all the gang violence that they were having, especially in the 60s and 70s. So I can understand making something like the switchblade illegal. I mean, let's face it. That knife, that blade is really only designed to stab something with. You could cut with it, but it's not very effective. All it's for is stabbing, which is why, even if it was legal to carry, I'm not going to carry it. It's not useful for me. But it's useful for a street thug, so they made them illegal. I can understand that. I can respect that. But they're starting to push the laws, make them more widespread. If they keep going, we're going to be right in the same case as that poor guy in Scotland, seeing our kids being arrested for carrying a potato peeler. So what can you do? Well, for starters, educate yourself and your family on what knives are and how they're used and what they're for. In spite of the fact that a lot of people in this country are now trying to say all knives are weapons, they're not. I would not want to try to defend myself with this. It's too small, it's too light, it's too easy to get by. I could do it, but I've had years of training on how to do it. Have you? I don't think so. Not likely, anyway. Now, something like this. This is a blackjack. This is a beautiful knife. It specifically is a Bowie. It's made by Blackjack Knives. This was developed as a camping knife. You can use it for splitting wood for your campfire. You can use it for hammering tent stakes into the ground. After you can use it to carve those tent stakes. And you can use it to cut up your chicken or your deer or your steak when it comes time to cook. And it's big enough that if you're in a serious knife fight, you can protect yourself and defend yourself as well as attack your opponent with it. But even there, unless you've had years of training, you're probably not going to do a very good job of it. So, defining knives as weapons, okay, I gotta admit they are, but they're also tools, and they're more useful and important as tools. You can open an envelope or a box with a knife. You could do it with a pair of scissors, but you're going to fight. It's not a good way to do it. Of course, admittedly, if you're trying to cut fabric to make a dress, you want that knife, those pair of scissors, because your knife isn't going to do a very good job of that. So know what knives are good for and what they're not good for. And finally, there is an organization out there called Knife Rights. I found about them about 2 years ago at the Blade Show. And they are doing for knives what the NRA originally did for gun owners. They're trying to get people educated on what knives are, how to use them, and how to respect them. But they're also lobbying Congress critters, legislatures, town council members, trying to get sensible laws on the book, trying to get rid of the idiotic laws like I just mentioned. They're on the website. As a matter of fact, I'll put a link right down below if you're interested. It's actually a rather interesting site. But support them. If you love knives, if you're a knife collector like I am, or just use a knife every day for work, support them. It's easy. Eat $10, $15 a year will go do amazing things to help. And at least yet, they're not gone as overboard as some other organizations have. You're still using common sense. And last but not least, talk to the people in your town and city. Get to know the police officers. Find out how they look at knives. And try to educate them if they're like that idiot officer in New York who knew that this is a switchblade because of his years of experience as a police officer. Idiot. Yeah, sorry, but he is. Talk to your councilman. Talk to your mayor. Explain what's going on. Tell them where you're coming from. Speak out. Don't let knives become something that we're banned from. They're too handy. They're too useful a tool. And they're too beautiful. They are. But in the meantime, it looks like I've gone almost 20 minutes on this. Wow, I really rambled. So I'd better head out, especially since I hear my family stirring, so it's time to get some breakfast going here. In the meantime, you take care. Hope you found something useful out of all this rambling. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, remember, if you're going to do anything at all, even if it's arguing with a Congress critter, do it with attitude. Just make sure it's respectful attitude. Don't want you arrested, after all. Meantime, you take care, and we'll see you again now. Bye.